Brian R. I don't know if it's Doak or Doak. I apologize for butchering his last name. He's a professor of biblical studies, and I have a bunch of quotation which I think when he writes it, he would tend to agree much more with you, Tim, um, than with Ken. So let's start from the beginning. He says that if anything is secondary, Genesis 6:4, it is the and also afterward clause which could have been easily added to make sense of the fact that these Nephilim, understood superordinately as giants, on parallel with Rephaim in Deuteronomy 2:11, clearly appear later in the storyline, not only in Numbers 13:33, but also in the figure of Og of Bashan and others in the conquest, not to mention Goliath. And we already talked about this, so he agrees with you. Good. Then he says the prominence of Og, king of the land of the Rephaim, as an adversary in the memory of the wilderness, wandering, and conquest led biblical authors to gesture toward both a gigantic stature for this king as well as his semi divine identity. A fragmentary and debated Ugaritic reference KTU 108 and then 1-3 suggests that the territory the Bible ascribes to Og and the Rephaim was viewed by at least the 14th or 13th century BCE. So this is going way before, as the habitation of a certain Rapiu, which was a patron deity of the Rapiuma in Ugaritic myth. I think this is important. So before I go with the next quotation, maybe you want to just jump in and explain or add some background commentary to our viewers how Brian makes connection between the Bible and the Ugaritic scriptures.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so Rapiu is kind of like this underworld deity who sort of functions in that context as like the Lord of the Dead. Okay, so other groups are going to say, Baal or Zeus or whoever you fill in the blank. It depends on the culture and the language group and that sort of thing as to what the names are. But in this context, the uh, Rapiu is like the top dog, and then you have the Rapiu Ma, who are sort of his underlings, and this is where we have these um, deceased rulers and that sort of thing. The heroes of the past are associated with the um, the biblical Rephaim, again connected back to the pre-flood Nephilim on a spiritual level. Okay, so um, we're all sort of in that same group. Again, it's a different tradition, but in this you have Og of Bashan. Uh, you note in the Bible it says Og, king of Bashan, right? But he's not just called the king of Bashan. Uh, and I mentioned this a moment ago. Og is actually a title, and it's something like a kind of priestly function, okay, where he has some connection uh, spiritually to these underworld gods, and he functions as the king and the sort of the connection to the power of these underworld deities and their minions. All right, so interestingly enough, in some manuscripts of the Septuagint, you have Og used interchangeably with the word Gog. So if you've read Ezekiel, you know about Gog and Magog and all this, which comes up again in Revelation 12. We're talking about the same guy. And a lot of people don't realize that, but yeah, there's a lot of tradition underlying all that too, which is particularly picked up in Greek traditions from these early periods, where you have Og referred to as, I think, Ogyges or Ogygius, depending on which translations you're looking at, um, and the land of Boeotia, which is, I think, a transliteration from Bashan. So again, we're in that same area. So the Greek mythology sort of overlaps into this, and you have this idea that you've got this guy who functions as the connection between the underworld and the land of the living. Yeah, so some interesting stuff there. That's why he's so prominent in the Bible. Also connected to this is Agag, king of the Amalekites. Again, we have the same thing. So Og, Agag, Gog. These are all um, linguistic variations on the same concept. You've got this guy who's in charge of the people, but he's getting his power from the realm of the dead.